What body fat percentage are you? Are you on the higher end of 35 to 40%, where your belly's still kind of poking out and you kind of look kind of weak, flat and soft? Or are you in the ranges of 20 to 30% body fat, where a little bit of definition starts to come in, but you're still kind of plump and nothing's really kind of showing? Or are you in the ranges between 13 to 90% of body fat, where some definition, and that's where visible abs really start to come through? And when we're at the spot of 8 to 10%, that's when we really start looking our greatest, and that's exactly where that beach body and those beach abs really start coming through. Anything below that, being at 1 to 7% body fat, is bodybuilding lean. That is extremely lean. That is a absurd level of leanness that you have to go through extreme dieting to get to. And anything probably below 8 and 10% body fat will be extremely bad for your health. It'll ruin your hormones, it'll ruin your energy levels on a day-to-day life. It will just start to go down. This is a photo of me for when I was cutting for my bodybuilding show a few months ago. I only had 10 weeks to cut, but I still got pretty freaking lean. And just from you see from the photo, my abs started coming in. I had a bit of oblique action coming in. I had vascularity coming through, but the main thing was my abs were popping, and they were extremely visible through the extreme dieting that I was doing. Now, if you are someone who is above 25% body fat, it may take a little longer than 60 days for you to cut down and to get down to beach body or beach ab ready physique, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. The principles that I'm going to share in this video to get down to beach ready ab level physique, they still apply to you. It just may take a little longer. I'm primarily talking to the people that are around 15 to 20% body fat. For them, it's going to be a lot easier to cut down in the next 2 months to get down to that beach ready ab level physique, which is what you want. But for you, if you're above 25% body fat, it's just going to take a little bit longer. That's all. If you're someone who's 35% body fat, 45% body fat, if you're pretty obese, then it's going to take a while for you. That doesn't mean these things aren't going to work for you. They just may take a little longer. There are 3 things that I'm going to cover in this video when it comes to getting beach level abs and having abs that are clearly visible when you're on the beach and you can walk out in public and you're like, damn, his abs are freaking popping. And the number one thing that we're going to start off with, and probably the most important thing when it comes to approaching this phase, is mindset. So many people come into the process of losing fat or losing weight and they don't change the way they approach it, or they don't change the way they think about it. And they end up quitting, or they end up feeling discomfort or uncomfortable. But the way you really need to think about it is, you need to be uncomfortable with being discomfort. You're essentially doing something you've never done before. And when you're getting down to the level, yeah, it may not be easy, it may not be hard, and you might get cravings, but the main thing that you focus on is just being consistent and ignoring the emotional side of things. There might be times where you might feel like giving up, or there might be times where you may look at yourself and you may see slow results, or you wish you could get fast results. But those are all part of the process. As I said before, you have to fall in love with the process instead of the outcome. If you're constantly thinking about the abs, and if you're constantly thinking about how you're going to get there and what it's going to look like when you're there, then you're not going to enjoy the process, and you're not going to be able to get through the process, because you're going to be focusing on the future where you're not at right now. And when you're approaching this dieting phase, and when you're approaching this training phase, you have to accept being uncomfortable, maybe being a little bit hungry, maybe doing the cardio that you may not want to do. But building that mental discipline and building that mental willpower will get you to finish. The most important thing is obviously starting, but if you can't finish and if you can't stay consistent, then you will cease to get the results. So it's super important that when you attack this phase of getting beach lean ready, when you try to get those abs to pop, that you approach it with such a mindset that you can just get through it and approach all those difficult times that you will encounter. And when you're in this phase of cutting and trying to get lean in the next 2 months, you gotta stick on the goals and you just stick to the things that are gonna get you the results. Which means no cheating, no skipping training, not doing the things that aren't going to get you to the result. If your friends ask you, hey, let's go out for a few beers and let's go out drinking, you got to be outcome oriented, and you got to say to yourself, well, I want this result, I want these abs in 60 days, so I'm going to do what's going to give me these abs in 60 days, and I'm not going to go out and do something else. That's the thing. So many people, they think they can just achieve it on the side, and yes, it is possible, but for your first time cutting and for your first time approaching this phase, yeah, you're not going to be perfect. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And the main thing that you can focus on is just doing the process and just doing everything that you can to get to that level of leanness and to approach being beach lean for your physique. It can be small things like setting yourself non-negotiables, like sticking to the diet every day, sticking to the cardio every day, not skipping meals, not skipping training, and most importantly, sticking true to what you want and the outcome as well. Because if you're 30 days into the 2-month cut and you say to yourself, oh, I'm fine where I am, this is uncomfortable, oh, this bagel won't hurt, or this donut won't hurt. That's not the mindset to have, because you're just going to end up building up the bad habits until they compound, and all of a sudden you're going to look back and you're like, damn, I actually didn't get to the goal. So the first thing is mindset. Super important when it comes to getting beach lean. And if you really want your abs to pop, then it's super important that you build a strong mindset with yourself and you build that strong discipline that will get you to finish, that will not only get you to start, but get you to finish the process. Now, obviously, we're getting to the bread and butter of what's actually going to help you lose weight and shred your belly fat in the next 60 days is obviously nutrition. Without a proper nutrition system set up, you will cease to get the results. It's literally the number one thing that you need when you're trying to cut. Everybody knows that you've got to be in a caloric deficit to lose fat, especially when you're trying to lose it in 2 months. And when you're doing a cut like this, you mainly want to focus on losing 0.5 to at least 1% of your body weight per week. And to find the right deficit that you usually go for, find your weight in pounds and then times it by 12 to 14. That'll give you a rough idea of where you can base your caloric deficit from, and it should be about a 300 to about a 500 deficit. At that point, it won't be too harsh, but also won't be too easy, so it'll really help you melt and shred that fat over the next 60 days. The reason we don't want to take cuts so aggressive is there is a risk of muscle loss. If you cut too fast, your body's going to freak out and it's going to say it to itself, okay, well, we need energy. You stopped eating food, and we're like, damn, we need energy. So it's going to start pulling energy from your muscles, and it's going to start getting energy from your muscles. And when we're cutting, we don't want to lose muscles. We want to maintain and retain all the muscles that we've built over the previous months of going to the gym. So it's super important that we don't do a really aggressive cut, and we don't just cold turkey and drop the calories way too fast that we end up losing all the work that we've worked for in the past. And obviously, when it comes to maintaining as much muscle mass as we possibly can, protein plays a massive role in that. The rule I like to follow is 0.7 to about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Sometimes you can even go a little bit more than that, going all the way up to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, but the whole goal of this is to keep the protein high, is to keep the muscle retention high. This will play into a big factor into the next one when I talk about training, but the whole idea of eating a sufficient amount of protein when we're cutting is literally to keep our muscles full, keep our muscles dense, and to keep them not wasting away, and to keep our body from not eating them. Because if you just cold turkey and if you drop the macros and if you stop eating enough protein, your muscles have nothing to sustain themselves, and it ends up eating away at what it's built, which is not what we want when we're trying to cut. So it's super important that we stick to the guidelines that we give ourselves, especially when we're cutting and we're trying to get lean. And especially when you're cutting, protein is a non-negotiable. You need to be hitting the protein goals every single day for a successful cut and to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. And another thing when it comes to nutrition is your fats. Usually aim for 0.3 to 0.4 grams of fat per pound of body weight. Just fill the rest of the calories with carbs, because we don't want to go cold turkey with the fats here, because fats are still super important when you're cutting. And as I mentioned before, when I was in bodybuilding prep and I got to such a low level of calories, I wasn't eating a lot of fats in my diet, and it affected my hormonal health. My libido was so tanked, I had no energy and I wasn't feeling good, and that's not what we want. We don't want to feel horrible when I cut. You might feel a little bit of discomfort, but we don't want to feel absolutely horrible, okay? It all depends on how lean you want to get as well. And pretty much to what I said before, just fill up all the remaining calories with carbs. So once you've worked out how many calories you need to eat in a day, for example, if you weigh 78 kgs or if you weigh 180 pounds, then you're going to have to eat about maybe 2,000 calories, and then you'll be eating 180 grams of protein, and then you work out your fats, and then you just fill up the remaining calories with carbs. I'll just give a quick little example. Let's say your maintenance is 2,700 calories and you're doing a cut of 2,200 calories. You should keep the protein around 170 grams, which would be 680 calories worth of protein. The fat should be around 65 grams, so about 585 calories, and just fill up everything with carbs. So the carbs end up being 230 grams, which is 920 calories. This is a great sort of structure to fill out when you're cutting, and it's a great sort of process to follow for the most efficient cut that we're trying to get. The biggest mistake people make when they're cutting is they slash calories too hard, they drop the carbs too low, and they don't eat enough protein. As I've mentioned before, when you cold turkey the protein and you drop the protein too low, you won't maintain as much muscle as possible, and also if you drop the fats too low, you're not going to be feeling good, and your hormones aren't going to be feeling awesome, and they're not going to be regulating as they should be. And when we're cutting, you're already going to be at a disadvantage because your body's pretty much eating itself while eating the fats. So we don't want to cold turkey everything and go too low with calories and too low with protein, because it's just not going to end up being a very successful cut. So the guidelines to follow with nutrition is a moderate deficit, keep the protein high, keep the fats moderate, and fill up everything else with carbs. Now the third major component when it comes to dropping fat in the next 60 days is training. Think of training as your tool. Every builder has their tool belt full of tools, and training is one of those tools. It's one thing that's going to aid your fat loss extremely well. The reason I say this is when you're cutting, as I mentioned before, your body might tend to lose muscle. But when you train, you're constantly telling your body, okay, we got to keep this muscle. We got to keep it because we're still lifting this heavy weight. So what you do is you make sure you train intense, make sure you train hard, and you stick to the weight that you're lifting. Because I'll give you an example. When I was in bodybuilding prep and when I was cutting, I didn't maintain the weight that I was lifting, so I ended up losing muscle and I ended up losing strength. Because when you're cutting, as I said before, your body's trying to eat itself. It's eating the fat off the body for energy. And when you're in the gym, your body's like in a catabolic state. It starts eating itself. It's good to be pushing yourself in the gym and maintaining the weight that you're lifting. If you lift a lighter weight than to what your previous lifting, that tells your body he doesn't need this muscle anymore to lift this weight. So they start getting rid of the muscle. And if you're trying to maintain as much muscle as possible, it's not ideal. So there's a few things I really want you to focus on the training part of cutting is obviously maintaining the weight and training close to failure. You've got to train to failure. You've got to tell your body that, okay, we've got to keep these muscles and we don't need to lose these muscles when we're cutting. So it's super important that you constantly tell your body that. Prioritize compound lifts, whether it's incline dumbbell press, it could be bench press, it could be squats, it could be leg press. Anything that's using more than one muscle, because compound lifts just recruit more muscle mass at once, which also helps with muscle retention. Another thing is don't replace training with cardio. Cardio is super important when you're cutting, and it's really good to do it around 2 to 5 times a week when you're cutting. But if you miss a training session, don't replace it with cardio. The more cardio you do, you're just going to end up burning all the muscle mass you built away. And it's super important that we keep our training in to maintain as much muscle mass as possible, because we don't want to end up skinny on the cut. We want to have that shredded beach look that everyone looks for when we're trying to get those beach ready abs in 60 days. So I would just recap everything that I mentioned there when it comes to cutting in 60 days. Obviously build a rock solid mindset with yourself, because without it, you might be able to start, but you may not be able to finish. And it's super important that you understand the processes and you can be okay with yourself if things get uncomfortable or things get a little bit hard. Second thing is nutrition. Without this, you're not going to lose the weight, you're not going to cut, you're not going to burn the fat. Make sure you keep the protein high and you keep the fats moderate, and then you just fill up everything else with carbs. And thirdly, make sure you're still training hard. Make sure you're still training close to failure and you're still giving your body and your muscles a reason to stick around, because the last thing we want is for us to end up skinny on the cut and not looking good. All right, we want to keep the muscle that we've spent all these months building. So but yeah, that's pretty much everything when it comes to getting extremely lean in the next 60 days or getting beach level physique in the next 60 days. So if you need to recap this video because you missed anything, feel free to watch back, but that's pretty much everything you're going to need to do a successful cut and over the next 2 months to get a beach level physique. Now if you found this video helpful, please subscribe to my channel and like the video. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to book a one-on-one call with me, there's a link in the description. On the call, we'll just go over a few things, your goals, your aspirations, where you want to take yourself, and from then we'll see if we're a good fit to work together. But that's pretty much today's video, so I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.